Do the Lions want to keep Ryan Branch at safety, where he was outstanding to start the season before he had to go back to slot? So he went this time around and said, you know what? The more I think about it, the more I really love the idea of saying, I think we should have a little priority to bringing back Carlton Davis. Now, does that mean we have to? No. If the Lions let Carlton walk because his price got too high, I'd understand it. I absolutely would. And you consider that we do have a guy like Rakestraw, who we drafted last season, who didn't play much, but with him, Amik Robertson, Taron Arnold, if Amik went to slot, could Rakestraw go out wide? Sure. How about the flip side? Can you just leave Amik out wide and then put Rakestraw in the slot and let him battle it out? Absolutely, right? Then you can leave Branch at safety. Love about bringing Carlton Davis is I think his impact on this team last season, we can't overlook it. Carlton Davis last season. Now, this is also including Buffalo, where he gave up 40 points. And he only played like 15 snaps in that game before he was injured. So, reality, I shouldn't even include that game, but I'm just going to do it, which should realistically make the numbers worse in this stretch that I'm looking at with Carlton. But if I even include that Buffalo game where they scored 48 points against us, look at the Lions' pass defensive stats with Carlton healthy. Completion percentage is the exact same without him, but yards per game, 232 versus 300. Now, neither of these are good. That would be 27th on the year. But this was last by a mile. Now, we've always given up a lot of passing yards per game, and started that to play with a lead all the time, so that helps. But there's a pretty significant difference there. Touchdown to interception ratio. You actually had more interceptions than touchdowns with Carlton versus when he went out. So the numbers tell you that, okay, Carlton played a huge impact. But how did Carlton play individually? I would argue Carlton Davis had the best season of his career. Crazy thing is, he did so much of that good in zone coverage. And when we brought him in, it was like, all right, what is he in man coverage? That kind of thing. He did so much good in zone coverage. And he was a good run defender for us. He allowed an 87.9 passer rating. He allowed a sub 60% completion percentage, which we saw as a team. We gave up 61%, so he was below that. 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, both against Houston. He essentially put the team on his... I mean, if we're keeping it real, the defense was clutch in that game, right? They brought us back into that game. And Carlton was the guy. He was the guy that immediately out half got an interception. He was the guy that saved a touchdown on an interception. That was probably just an awful decision by Stroud. But the point is, he did kind of keep us in that game. We ultimately win that football game. 6 pass breakups on the season. And again, he's always been a really good man coverage piece. This is why I was like, oh, this guy's going to fit perfectly. He is good in every type of assignment that we put him in. Here, you can essentially count it as off-man coverage. Look at the pedal. Look at the footwork at the top of the route. It's smooth. It's fluid. He handles the route well there. So that's an example of off-man coverage, right? Now we get to another spot. Let's get him in press coverage. One-on-one with Dontavian Wicks. Look at this off the line here. The footwork smooth, the top of the route. Look at him mirror throughout. Look at him just stick in his hip and roll with him through the route. So now we get that look. Now another man look. We won't call this press, a little bit closer to off man, but let's just get a base of line here. Let's get a speed out route. Now this one was open. It was kind of a misthrow, incomplete pass. And then we see him in zone coverage. So now he has to drop out at the snap. Now we get more of a quarters look defensively. So now he's playing top down, cover 4 zone coverage. Watch him at the top of the route. Look at how he mirrors at the top of the route with the receiver. Settles down on top of the route. He's breaking that inside. If that ball's thrown, it's picked off. Now let's get a 2-deep look. Let's let him play underneath 2-deep. Okay, releases inside. Immediately, vision gets back across half field. Follows Christian Watson, cuts him off. Now there's a sack. Price point is the tricky part with Carlton. Because as you see on Over the Cap, I essentially gave him $13.8 million per year. And that was straight off a spot track. That's what they're projecting. But I really try to dig into it and say, okay, well, where is he going to, where's his, I did this with every player. 13.8 per year to about 15 million is I think where his range is going to fall per season. And with him turning 29 years old, that lock him up just over 30 years old. Yeah, there could be some concern there, but I have less concern, I think, with his play style. The other cornerbacks that have been paid, it's hard to find a great comparison to him recently. Like Chidobe Awuzie, I thought was interesting. He got a 3-year, $30 million deal, $36 million deal, which would put him at $12 million per season. And I think that clearly Carlton's a better player than Chidobe Awuzie, but he was coming off of a strong season in 2023, but not as good as I think what Carlton's coming off this past year. He was just younger. He allowed a 112 pass rating, 68% completion percentage, but he graded out pretty well how much it would actually cost to bring Levi back. Because Spot Track will tell you $4.5 million per season for 2 years. That's what they're going to say based on his value. But here's where I think it gets really interesting. We take into account Levi's injury history. What if I gave you a guy like Ed Oliver, for example? Ed Oliver signed a 4-year, $68 million deal, which is $17 million per season. The season he was coming off when he signed that deal was 31 pressures or 4 sacks, which is a 68 grade for him. That was the year, and the year before he had 40 pressures with 5 sacks. Those were the 2 years he was coming off of when he got paid 4 years, $68 million. Now think what Levi did last season. 45 pressures. He had more pressures last season than those 2 years for Ed Oliver. The one thing with Levi is the injury history. And Levi has a legitimate concerning injury history for a long-term deal. So the more I thought about this, the more I thought to myself, okay, could this get over $10 million per year? Yes. The initial idea I came up with was like, all right, probably 2 years, 12 million, right? 2 years, 12 million per year, right? Because it's under Ed Oliver, but it's reasonable based on his production. And it may get to that. And I do think that there's a number that could outprice the Lions, but potentially get Levi back on a 1-year deal. Like, unless Levi wants to go elsewhere, which you may. Levi may say, I want to be in a different scheme. I want to try something different. And I'd understand that. There's been a lot of movement for him. But if Levi was like, yo, I kind of want to be back. And you were like, you know what? We can't give you a long-term deal right now. Maybe the market's not offering that across the board. But they're like, yo, you want to win. You got a spot here. Right? You got a lot better here. We want to keep you around because the flexibility is going to be really important with Casey Rogers as our defensive line coach. What about Marcus Davenport? It was about 500 snaps that he played that season. I can verify and double check. And then Minnesota barely plays at all, right? Plays like 2 games, signs with us on a 1-year deal for about, I think it was like $5-6 million. We looked at it last time. The point is I'm seeing that and I'm asking myself, why couldn't we do that with Levi? Maybe we can't, but I would have to look into that option. And I think for the Lions, it may be their best interest to say, look, our salary cap situation, the concern isn't as much right now. The concern is long-term because we have these extensions. Are we sure that we're comfortable with saying give Levi 3 years? I don't know, because what if he gets hurt again? And they're like, dang, we just gave that guy 3 years. If you think about what killed the Lions, think about not what killed the Lions, but what was the biggest problem for the Lions and Brad Holmes and all of these guys the first time around with Brad Holmes? It was the extensions that we gave out in-house, and those guys got hurt. Tracy Walker, Romeo Okwara, they got hurt. We gave out extensions to those guys early. They got hurt, and that's what led to, we got this dead cap. That's where it hurt us. I think with Levi, the Lions would be very fair to say, look, we'd like to bring you back. We'll give you a legitimate number, maybe $9-10 million for a season, but we're going to go a 1-year deal. We're not going to give you multiple years. Now, if you prove it again next year, you build on this year, then we're talking long-term extension, maybe here or elsewhere, of course. But this is your chance to go earn that, money. And maybe he's like, there's too much competition. I don't think that there is. Right, John Kaminsky's a free agent. Marcus Davenport's a free agent. You have Mekhi Wingo. Mekhi Wingo shouldn't take your spot, right? Not after what you did last season. And maybe a draft pick. That's not a terrible situation for competitiveness to say, like, I could be the starter again next year. So I'm saying if I'm the Lions, I'm offering Levi a good chunk, maybe more than 9, for 1 year. I'm offering a 1-year deal saying, look, man, you take this deal. Love to see how you play again this year, but we can't right now buy into a long-term deal just because we don't trust your health.